Well, I'm happy to drink out of the well. At important occasions in my life, I like to go top shelf. If I'm a business owner going into a highly regulated industry, I think that's an important time in your life to also considering going top shelf. Welcome to Norris McLaughlin's Top Shelf Legal, a limited podcast series where we break down the hard stuff on beers, distilleries, breweries, and spirits. I'm your host, Ted Zeller, practice group leader of the liquor law group at Norris McLaughlin. In this next episode of Top Shelf Legal, I'm going to talk to you about the crazy world of Pennsylvania liquor license pricing. Boy, things have really changed and have really heated up, and it is really a changing marketplace from what I've seen. I deal with the sale of retail liquor licenses in Pennsylvania, all over Pennsylvania. I've done licenses from Erie to Chester, from Pike to Allegheny, everything in between. Covered the whole state, whether it's an R license, a distributor license, which is known as the D license. Pricing varies all across the state. I'm really going to focus here on the restaurant liquor license, which is the most common form of license. Generally in the state, there's close to 14,000 restaurant liquor licenses in the state. There's only about 1,100 beer distributor licenses in the state. The restaurant license is the most versatile. It's the one that licenses the corner bar, the fine restaurant, as well as the supermarket and convenience stores that you're seeing. And it's one that has to have 30 seats and have a health permit and the ability to sell food. Again, I get involved in a lot of deals all across the Commonwealth, but also I'm known to a lot of lenders, and lenders, especially when they're doing United States Small Business Administration loans, seek to have a written appraisal in the file, not only for the real estate, but also for the license. And they actually understand that in Pennsylvania, as opposed to other states where you just kind of apply for the license and you get it, licenses have real value. And those lenders will lend up to like 50% of the loan to value ratio for that. So it's important for the lender to understand what that value is. Before, when I did those types of appraisals, there's only a couple of brokers in the state that really specialize in this. There's only a couple of attorneys in the state that really understand this types of things. So it was a couple of phone calls here and there. There's also a recent tool that I'll talk about in just a moment called the auctions, which can also help you establish values. But I'm just going to kind of roll you through the landscape of what caused liquor licenses to continue to rise in price over the last couple decades. Before 2003, if you wanted to obtain a restaurant liquor license, you had to find one in the municipality where you wanted to open your business, either acquiring somebody else's business with the license or finding a license in the municipality where that business was going out. And if you wanted to move it somewhere else, it could only stay in that municipality. 2003 changed. It allowed you to move the licenses across municipal lines as long as it stayed in the same county. Now, there's some odd rules with town centers that you can move something over to a county line, but that's not really subject matter of this podcast because that factor has not really impacted liquor license values across the Commonwealth. So 2003 had that change. As long as you had to go to a hearing before the municipality that was going to receive the new license on its grounds and get that approved before you could move it, but you could move it. Then probably the biggest single factor in impacting current values right now happened in 2010, where the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, in a case brought by the Pennsylvania Malt Beverage Distributors Association against the Liquor Control Board, Wegmans intervened, basically ruled that, hey, as long as you separate the premises between licensed and unlicensed premises, you can have internal connections between the two. You can still license those premises as long as it had the tables and chairs for 30 and, offered food and, then you could sell your beer. That's how grocery stores now could become licensed. And now also convenience stores, which are just kind of mini versions of grocery stores. And that just brought a huge amount of new entrants into the marketplace. And when you're dealing with grocery stores, the Wegmans, Giants, ShopRites of the world, I've helped out BJ's get some licenses. They're starting to get into the market there. If they want a license, they're going to pay for it. They're going to find it. And although I'm always trying to sell high, buy low for my clients, but those larger corporations, or just think about the Wawas and the Sheets of the world, they're going to pay for licenses. So it has increased the value of those licenses because you keep on seeing new records in the market. I'm in the process right now. I just signed up an agreement, and we're now talking, this is May 2024. So if you're listening to this podcast 2 years from now, you might want to add 20% to the marketplace, but it's increasing in value that much, because I'll get into some of those values, the actual dollar amounts shortly, and some of the reasons why those values change. But I'm about ready to set a record sale in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for a license, and it's a big number. I can't disclose it, but it's a couple of bucks short of $1 million. That's crazy. We've never had something like that before. So then also in 2016, which helped a little bit with the supply side, because licensing sales are supply demand, very capitalistic driven. When somebody comes to me looking for a license, I tell them, if you give me 4-5 months in market, I can probably get you a better price if you're trying to get open in 4 or 5 months, because if you're trying to get open in 4 or 5 months, you got to hustle it. You have to find a license immediately. You have to move it in the municipality where you want to operate the business, assuming you're going to do an intermunicipal transfer of that change in the law I mentioned earlier in the podcast. And then you have to go through the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board to approve it before you can start operating. So it's a factor in looking for licenses. LCB in 2016, and they had their first one in the fall of 2016, started license auction. People referred to them as the zombie licenses. The licenses that were taken away by the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board because bar went wild and had too many violations. Somebody didn't pay their taxes so they couldn't renew the license, and then the license went out of existence. Any reason that the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board took away the license, or the licensee voluntarily turned in the license, they had all these licenses, these were kind of dead and not being able to be renewed or activated. But with one, swipe of the pen by the legislature, they came back to life in the form of the zombie auctions. So I think we're up to about 12, 13 of them since 2016, and they've been a good source for licenses. But what I've seen in the last auction and two is a pattern starting to develop, that the licenses in the counties where you really need it, they're not available anymore. That one license that I would mention about making a record sale, that county had a license in the first auction and hasn't had a license since. What are the factors? Well, the factors are that you have a population that has grown, and you just don't have enough licenses to kind of support the population. The best factor of it is looking at something like State College, where there's tens of thousands of college students, right? But they're all transient. They're not counted against the population. And since liquor licenses were originally handed out by population of 1 per 3,000, even though every county in the state is what's called over quota, and sometimes by a lot, and certain areas are more over quota than others. Like the Luzerne and Lackawanna had tons of bars. Like every single quarter had a bar up there. They've got way more licenses per capita than a lot of the other per capita analysis around other counties around the Commonwealth. Something like Cumberland County, which had a lot of dry towns in it, but then had an explosion of the population because people somewhat got out of Harrisburg, and it was just across the river. And Cumberland County's great area, great rural mixed area with nice homes and everything. It became the real nice suburbs where everybody wanted to live. Well, there weren't enough licenses, so Cumberland County pricing went crazy. Chester County pricing, nuts. Always has been nuts. Usually the records. When you talk about Center County and Chester County, they're pretty much at the top at like $500,000. That Cumberland County, which I mentioned before, that's the champ right now. It's the leader in the clubhouse, and it's several $100,000 more than that $500,000 mark. when you talk about the Philly Five, Chester's one of them. But in the city of Philadelphia, you're talking about $160,000, $170,000. You can get a restaurant liquor license. Montgomery County has always been a big, strong market because it's home to one of the largest malls in the United States. The King of Prussia Mall has just so many licenses. And again, you talk about all the transients that come in, and the need for licenses just drives demand up, but the supply is down. So you're looking at Montgomery County right now at mid threes, maybe towards higher threes. Neighboring Bucks, also a very strong market. Bucks is a little bit different though. It's more spread out geographically, but it's starting to catch up with Montgomery. A lot of development in Bucks. You're talking about low threes. Adelco has been kind of rising a little bit. They're getting up to about $200,000, but there's a lot of different counties that are rising all around. I mean, I have Northampton County, which is 5 miles from where I'm sitting right now. In the last year to, I'd say 15 months, the license prices there have jumped $150,000 from about $200,000 to about $350,000 just in the last year to 15 months. Lehigh County remains strong around the $250,000 mark. Berks has increased as much as Northampton County, at least in the time period. And now it's tough to find a Berks County license for anything less than $200,000. All the way out in Erie, you're still not talking about huge demand, although Erie's kind of an up-and-comer, which we like to see. That's just north of $100,000. A lot of demand down in York. We're seeing like high threes. Lancaster has always been strong. Lancaster, you're talking, low 300,000s. Sometimes it percolates up to about mid 300,000s. Lebanon, neighboring, has gone up to about 175,000. These are just some of the instances that the values of these licenses. I mean, you give me a county, I can find out what the value is because I've got all the data from the auctions now. I can objectively look at it. But Pennsylvania is going to have a liquor license problem. We're seeing it right now. Very difficult for the small business person to obtain a liquor license to operate that fine dining restaurant that they want to. And we're getting to the point where only the big corporations are going to be the ones that are going to be able to afford those licenses. Although there are certain counties that they're still available at low prices. Like I said, the Luzernes and Lackawannas in the mid $30,000 range. But then you get up to Pike, and that's like around $75,000. But it's getting difficult out there in the major population centers. Well, more so the higher end suburbs surrounding the major population centers where the most demand and the lowest supply is. And you're seeing those prices take off. This has been a Norris McLaughlin Top Shelf Legal Limited podcast series where we run through the topics of beers, distilleries, breweries, and spirits. I want to thank you, the listener, for being a part of the conversation. Be sure to tune in next time for a brand new episode. If you would like to learn more about our work, be sure to check out my legal liquor blog or email me at topshelflegal@norris-law.com. That's topshelflegal@norris-law.com.